go. Okay, now we're live.
Yay! It's Wednesday. Are you
Yes,
making
well,
it through the week?
welcome to another Workshop Wednesdays with Carrie and Dan. And today, what we're going to be talking about is what to consider when you're quoting a job. So this is about pricing your practice. So, Carrie, since you've been out in the private practice for some years, um, um, how did you start your, when you were considering, bringing on clients? What these are things to consider, like what do I charge people, right?
Well, luckily for me, I've got my CPA and I work for an accounting firm, and I ended up becoming the QuickBooks person. But along the journey, he had to establish how much he was going to pay me and how much he was going to charge a client.
Mm,
And so the way he explained it to me is it should be your employee fee should be multiply that by three to get what you bill the client. So I
mm,
use that formula to figure it out because I have seen so many people when they're starting out launch off into the world and they're charging what they would be paid as an employee. And you have to keep in mind your employee rate doesn't cover your social security, and if you're self-employed that's 15.3, doesn't cover any overhead. And when I worked for this accounting firm, I was actually an independent contractor. Um, and I'm trying to think this was years ago. Let's say he paid me 20 bucks an hour, which was probably pretty good back then. So he was billing me out at 60. I'm now have worked my way up to charging 150 over the years, and I could probably push that up some more. So you can see there's such a big difference between the 15 or $20 an hour on up to which you could bill 150 to 250 is probably about the top and within what we do.
and that gives a good segue to, how, do you want to charge by the hour, or do you want to have a value a package that includes your costs? What are your thoughts about that?
So I'm probably old school on that, and not because, and I'll tell you why. Because there's actually two ways that you can do a QuickBooks consulting job, or three. So if somebody drops in your lap and it's a cleanup job, you really don't know what it's going to cost. And I have been caught in some that are I've billed out $10,000 over like 6 months worth of work. So they're tremendous. They take over your practice. You can't take on any new clients. So you really need to really think about what you're offering. Now, if I took on a new client and they became a bookkeeping client, and after I got through a month or two, and I thought, this just takes me an hour. It's an hour a month, and my rate's 150. I'd probably say, okay, we'll do this for 150 a month, but you've got to buffer in some time, some questions, some whatever. I might just round it up to 200 in case there's some year-end things. And then that you just want to make sure that you're covering, if you want to switch to value pricing, you don't want to overcharge the client. Obviously you'll make more money, but you don't, because somebody else will come in and kind of, they might take the work away. So you have to really balance that. Setting up a client, to me, cleaning up is one nightmarish project that secretly I love to do. And the other can be a setup. And it could be a bad setup that you have to fix, or setting up from the beginning. And there's a lot of unknowns. So to me, it's hard to guess. Now, if you've done enough setups and you do enough repetitive stuff, then yes, you can actually guess what those are going to be.
Now, a good practice, or good best practice, a good best practice, I think, is setting up your pricing structure to be like a good, better, best, right? Like you'll have a basic, bare bones suite of services when you're doing this kind of like a value pricing, um, and then you'll have a middle of the road, and then you'll have like white glove type of service, and you price them to encourage the middle of the road option, right? So like you barely do anything, with your bare bones service. So somebody would look at that and go, oh, well, that's nothing, right? I could do that. It's usually the response.
I could
And
do a
then
bank, right? Yeah.
and then something that is so over the top that they would be like, oh, well, that I can't afford that, but look at all I'm getting. Okay, well, I'll get the middle of the road, and that's typically how you um, would show that, as you're quoting them, and that avoids the dreaded scope creep of of clients texting you at 2 a.m. in the morning, because
Boundaries.
that is
Boundaries. Set
that is
boundaries.
something that you need to set up in your engagement, and how you communicate that up front, so that your client is well aware of those kinds of expectations in your services. But there's a place for hourly billing too, right? Because sometimes you just don't know what you're getting into, like those cleanup work, or stuff like that, and sometimes you may want to pre-bill a few hours, and then use that
Yeah.
as a retainer, so that you can then figure out, and then that'll be a stopping point. Then you can talk to them as like, okay, well, it took me 5 hours so far, and I'm 2 months into your 2-year project.
There's
Where do we
there's
want to go from here?
there's some tricks too that what you were talking kind of reminded me of. File data checkups when you're doing a cleanup for somebody. You could create, or there's people have sold these things, but create sort of a template, and the more you do, the more you can become an expert in this. And it go ahead and charge for, let me have an hour to look at your books, and I'll give you a report on what's wrong. But don't give them the answers. Just say it looks like AR doesn't balance and your bank rec hasn't been done since February, and that sort of thing. Just give them like a diagnostic report so they have a value for what you've done. But keep in mind that if it takes you an hour to look at their file, put a buffer and some time to run that report. So really make sure you're covering your value and your time. So many people shortchange themselves there. Now, on the flip side, if you're learning, give it away. Give them something, it might take you 8 hours to do, but you think it should take you one, but you're scrambling and doing videos and stuff, go to school of bookkeeping and learning stuff. You have to stop to learn. Don't bill them for your learning time. And be honest, I actually took a client on. It was a toy shop, a great client. And they moved in, they didn't know what they were doing. I said, sure, I know QuickBooks. Well, I didn't know point of sale. And I didn't want to totally fall. I knew enough. I knew more than them. I knew more, I could navigate, but I didn't know what I was doing. So I didn't bill for that time. You don't want to bill if you're learning. So there's nothing wrong with being honest. So I said, listen, I'm going to sit here, and this is actually great for me. I'm going to learn how to set up point of sale. You guys are going to teach me the retail side and what you need, and I'm going to learn how to do QuickBooks, and we all win. And they really respected that. But boundaries at the end of, I'll do this for 2 weeks. Boundaries. Don't say I'll do it forever, and never give them your cell phone ever. And when they do text you at 2 a.m., don't answer.
Yeah.
Because then you're telling them it's okay.
Right.
You answer Monday.
They're learned behaviors.
Like children.
Right.
So
now you wrote a blog post about pricing, and it has a really great concept of good, cheap, and fast.
yes.
And those are three components that people are wanting when they want all three, right? But
Yes.
that would be ideal. And you can think of that in terms of any service, not just
Even building a house, you could think of it in those terms.
right.
Right.
So any business interaction or transaction, I mean, even just shipping, like FedEx, you have good and fast and cheap. Typically, you're going to be able to only choose two of those options when you're boiling it down to, okay, what am I going to be getting here? So uh, if I choose ground, right, for FedEx, that's not fast, but
No,
it's
it's
cheap,
cheap.
and FedEx is fairly reliable. So you got the good and the cheap. But if you need it, absolutely need it there tomorrow, you're going to pay for that, and it's not going to be cheap to be able to do that. So we want to talk a little bit about that.
Yes. So, for example, when I would get these huge projects, I would have to bring in help. And because I would get overwhelmed. So I would bring in help and I would have them do data entry. All right. So let's say I'm billing out at 150 and I have a data entry person doing it at $50 an hour. Now, if I make them do it really, really fast and they're not that good and their rates, then it's going to be bad. Good, bad. You don't get good service. So do you want to hire someone that's a $50 an hour person? They're cheaper, but they're going to, if you want good, they're going to be slower. So if you hire me and you want it fast, you're going to have to pay. I mean, it's almost, and I'm, and I'm only one person. So, you have to think about when the client comes to you and we all want good. We want to build that nice house and we don't want them to, we want the carpentry right. But if we went and got the cheapest person out there that bid, your door's not going to be square.
Right.
So pick two is the motto. And
Yep.
if you understand that with your client, it'll help you gain some respect. And I say I have staff that could be your kid. I have staff that can enter in the data, but they don't know accounting. So, you get what, and I would often do that to save money on the project. If they don't have somebody in house, another thing that we like to do too is we'll partner up with them. If you've ever worked with a client and they don't buy in on the project, like this is a good one. Somebody goes, we need software, and they've been doing pen and paper. Those are the worst. And you go in and you got this lady that's about to retire. She doesn't want to learn QuickBooks. And the owner sends you in there to teach Betty QuickBooks. No, Betty sometimes quits. So be ready for that. And then they're in a world of pain. So be careful who you're training and what your job is, because resistance to train, they'll be telling everyone you're terrible because they don't want to learn the product. So, but do get the buy-in. Definitely get the buy-in with the team. If it's more than one owner person, you're going to be dealing with personalities, and it's not always easy. Nobody likes change, but once you can show them this is, hey Betty, I showed her how to do a bank reconciliation. You've never seen anyone happier, and they felt like. But it took more time for me because she wanted to run and quit. So if you can get the buy-in of the company and you're not doing it for them at 150 an hour, get Betty to enter in those checks and come back and check on her in a week. And the company will save money and they're learning at the same time. So it's a big project scope. You want to write out, be real careful with, this is what you're going to do and this is what I'm going to do, and put boundaries in place so that they don't expect you to build them a mansion, for $100. And they will. Right, Dan?
Yeah.
Have you had that
Yeah.
happen?
Well, yeah. I mean, we had just a recent example. My wife was involved in a car incident, and we had to get the car repaired. And we took it to a couple places. We went to the place that the insurance company recommended, and they said, X amount, and guesstimated, a certain amount of days for that to happen. And there was one that was close by, and I wanted to get a second opinion because the insurance company said, hey, we're obligated to this amount. If you can find it less somewhere else, we'll pay the amount, and then you can keep the difference. So I went to this other place, and they actually, to my surprise, it was almost twice as much. They estimated twice as much and twice as much time to fix it. But he really took his time. He, during the estimate, walked me through, everything that he saw. And we ultimately decided to go with the first place because they estimated less time and it was the preferred, vendor for the insurance company. And lo and behold, they found more damage that they didn't see on the estimate, and it took more time for them to do that. So if I would have gone with the first one, I would have known what to expect. So there's that whole expectation of or under promising, over delivering.
Yes.
Where the flip side of that, if you under promise, did I say that right?
Overpromise and
if you
underdeliver.
overpromise and then underdeliver on that, now I have a bad taste about that, going back to that first place again. And now next time, hopefully there won't be a next time, but there always is. I have two teenage drivers.
Yeah.
I will be going to the first, the place that under promised, but then ultimately would over deliver on that.
The other thing that I think is really that you touched on I had to write it down before it leaked out of my old brain. But prepay, there's a concept of prepay. Now you have retainer, which you have to manage. You have to figure out how to track it. The one that I really like, we set up, we use internally. We have our calendar link, and it links to paying. So I like when somebody just prepays for an hour and 150, boom, done. But you really want to you want to offer some kind of free consulting, just 15 minutes, so that you can explain what you can do. You'll ultimately sell more than an hour at a time.
Mm-hmm.
Or rent me for a day and let's see how fast I can get through the project. And then that way they're not committing to a $10,000 job, even though it might be, and they're just not ready for it. It's sort of a way to test the waters and get an idea. I mean, in order for you to do a comprehensive scope, that's going to take time too. That's billable work. So you just have to be aware that your time, a lot of times we see across the Facebook, is a lot of people undercharging or trying to charge after they get into the job, and they were so busy in the job they forgot to bill the client, and they're waiting till they're done. And guess what? They don't see the value once you're done. Once you hand that file over, all of a sudden you aren't worth 150 an hour because they didn't do it. They did not see. Sometimes the clients that come to your door that have really struggled and tried to figure it out, and you fix it, you're the hero. You want to be the hero and get those testimonies, because when you're searching for stuff like Dan and that car repair place, hopefully you'll give them the right stars too. That helps us when we're shopping around. So make sure your clients give you good testimonies so that you don't have to sell your value and your expertise so much. Now, speaking of expertise, we've been talking too about how important it is to be schooled.
Right. Yeah. I sometimes when I'll talk to, do that free, 15-minute consultation, I'll provide them with a list of free resources. It's like, okay, well, you want to convert your data here's how you do it. And then they'll try it. And then 2 clicks in, yeah.
There. And they see your value. You want them to see your value.
Right.
If you perform magic behind, I've had customers say to me, just fix that. And actually the benefit of working remote is you're not there, because I will literally have a client stand up and have me sit at their computer and work my magic. And I'm like, no. I really like to remote in and even do this with the keyboard and have them do it. So they're training to do it. Now there's usually several things in setup and mapping and all that stuff that really they don't need to totally understand unless they're going to continue to add inventory or add, if they're going to manually do sales tax or payroll, stuff like that. There's really no reason for you to have to teach them on setup, but teach them on training, use them. Have them be your kid that's doing the data entry. Have them help. Bring in Betty. Betty needs to know how to do it.
Exactly. Now, Mary on our Facebook, she actually has a situation. She says, I'm in a situation with some long-term clients where I feel I'm now overcharging them now as they've taken on some of the work. So it's the opposite of scope creep. What would that be called? Scope recession. I
Well,
just
yes, that does
this
happen. I mean, you can go back and say, listen, and make sure your rate is high enough, Mary. Don't undercharge. So if you're spending an hour and used to spend 5, go ahead and be nice and drop them back, and then make sure you get a testimony. Not that they're saying, oh, Mary's only 100 an hour. Just that she was honest and wasn't spending as much time and adjusted. And I would say that to a client. Listen, we can reevaluate once a
Mhm.
year, once a quarter. Let's get through the setup and the cleanup. And right now it's going to be $1,000 a month while I go through this nightmare stacks of stuff. But at the end of the day, I hope that I'm only spending an hour a month. Some
Yeah,
clients I actually only do once a year just to get that balance sheet cleaned up and have it ready for the tax return person. And they're not an hour. I usually
yeah,
spend days on those, but they only want to see me once a year. They don't care. They don't care about financials every month.
right.
So
Yeah, I had the same situation where I was charging them hourly, and I looked at the last year, and I said, okay, well let's kind of make this a little bit more valuable for you, and then we'll just do a monthly thing, and then you have me as needed. You can schedule a time and that sort of thing, and that way it's not like picking off an hour. And now it's like they're meeting me for like 15 minutes, a couple times a month, and now they're looking at, like, wait a minute, now but now they see the value of that. And then you can start to introduce other advisory types of services when you talk to them, because you now have more time
yeah,
to be
make
able,
sure
able to
they're
do
in the
that.
right payroll, payments, integration to save them
Mhm.
more time. Take a deep look and see if there's something, extra consulting, especially right now, if they have the kind of business that they might need to just talk to you about is there something I should spend more time and or pivot. A lot of people have had to pivot.
Hmm. Absolutely. So we have another resource that we want to throw in the chat, the comments there in Facebook. This is all about how much does QuickBooks setup cost? Talk about that.
It's actually a fun read, but I was just trying to. I spent the time in that blog, really trying to make you think about, it's on my regular website, right, Dan? So
Yeah,
it's for customers to see too, because they need to think about what they're asking us to do. Are they coming in just to clean the floors, or am I asking them to strip them, sand them, refinish them? What are they need to understand what they're asking of us is not easy. I have another funny story. I went into
okay.
a customer to set up point of sale, and she said she literally thought the inventory was just going to magically hop in there. And I mean, she had closet full of stuff, and I said, that's not how. I mean, she did not understand. So we need to make sure we explain what it takes. It's not magic. I
Right.
wish it were. It doesn't just transport in. You got to
Yeah,
set it up.
and if it is something that just magically, like if you set up rules in the bank feeds,
Right.
or if because the conversion from desktop to online is really just like 5 clicks and you're done. Don't undervalue that, because you're there as a safety net when something goes horribly wrong. Intuit, of course, would love to say that every conversion goes through seamlessly, and it goes through, but it's that seamlessly part
It's
that
the from garbage in, garbage out. You have to make sure, you have to check a lot of things to make sure it went through. And then how much involvement are you going to have on the other side to verify that balance sheet, that it ties in with the tax return? You can do it before, you can do that. There's a lot to consider that, we know garbage in gives us garbage out. If you don't have
right.
good data, you can't get good reports. So
Oh,
they
my
need to.
my inventory was negative, and now I want to bring that over to, to QuickBooks Online. That's going to be uh,
Payroll. Oh, and I'm running payroll, by the way, and I need to bring it in. No. So
Right.
there's a lot to consider.
So yeah, so we threw those in there. Those blogs are as resources. You can always check us out on School of Bookkeeping. Free month that you can sign up for, and give us some feedback as far as what you want to see as far as courses on School of Bookkeeping. Regarding this topic, or any topic that you want. We can start there and go somewhere else. So.
That's
Um,
right. Just let us know what would help you guys in running your businesses better and feeling more confident about your knowledge so you can charge more,
right.
right?
So next
or,
week.
and do your own books too. Make sure you feel comfortable with your own books so that you can make those wise decisions. So we're
So
here
next
for
week.
everyone. Next week is
Yeah.
what, Dan? I
So
forgot.
next week is QBO and desktop, the big debate.
All
So we'll
right.
so we'll be putting up our QuickBooks platform dukes
I will
and
be
talking
seeing
about the difference between the
PPT.
two.
Everyone knows I love desktop. So be ready, Dan.
All right. Well, we'll see you next week on another Workshop Wednesdays. Have a great day.
Sounds great. Have a great week. Bye bye.